Hello, my name is Joshua. I'm an undergraduate at the University of Reading, studying English literature, and today I will be talking to you about Richard II. Directed by Rupert Gould, The Hollow Crown was produced by the BBC and NBC for television as part of the BBC's Cultural Olympiad for the London 2012 Olympics. Richard II, the first of Shakespeare's Henrietta trilogy, was aired on the 30th of June 2012 on BBC Two. It stars Sir Patrick Stewart as John of Gaunt, David Morrissey as Northumberland, Rory Kinnear as Bolingbroke, and Ben Whishaw as Richard II. The narrative of Richard II focuses on the divine right of kings to rule. We will be looking at how Richard's divinity and humanity are represented, specifically through the use of close-ups and framing. We will be looking at the Hollow Crown's adaptation of Act 3, Scene 3 of the play, which presents Bolingbroke's siege of Flint Castle and Northumberland's confrontation with King Richard. Following Bolingbroke's imperative, the cut to an extreme close-up of Richard displays his golden armour, which contrasts with the dull, earthy tones of Bolingbroke and his soldiers, exhibiting Richard's regality. The blurred edges of the frame gives Richard an ethereal quality. As the camera tracks downwards, it reveals his sword and sceptre, representative symbols of his authority. Richard's face is excluded from the frame, making it apparent that he wishes to display his divinity to the invaders, rather than his humanity. As the rebels enter the castle, organs begin to play deep, sombre notes, bringing to mind the sound one hears upon entering a church. The neighing of the horses and howling of the wind evokes an atmosphere reminiscent of horror, implying that the invaders are trespassing on hallowed ground. Low, handheld shots create tension, as we are unable to see the subject of Northumberland and Bolingbroke's gaze as they search the castle, and makes them appear to be looking upwards, searching for someone above them. The camera tracks upwards from ground level, where Northumberland stands, to the top of the wall to give a medium shot of Richard. This movement serves to show how much higher Richard is positioned than Northumberland. King Richard is positioned in the centre of the frame, indicating his prominence in comparison to Northumberland, who is positioned to the right of his frame. He appears flanked by angels, with his head encircled by a halo. This symbolism recalls early depictions of Christ in an attempt to portray Richard as with the same divine quality. The use of height of the castle walls ensures that Richard is elevated above Bolingbroke and his soldiers on the ground. Due to this, Bolingbroke and his men are forced to look upwards, heavenwards. This adaptation has Richard appear on the castle walls alone, rather than joined by members of his court as presented in the play. The BBC's 1978 adaptation, with Derek Jacobi, followed the original direction, yet Ben Wheatshaw's solitude emphasises Richard's role as the lone sovereign, yet this also illustrates his isolation. Richard's isolation, despite making him appear more impressive and regal, also leaves him vulnerable. When Northumberland knocks on the castle door to no response, the lack of a garrison reveals Richard's solitude. In the following extreme close-up of Richard, the camera pans from the crown to his watching eye, finally revealing his humanity. His faint panting can be heard, and slight beads of sweat are visible on his face, indicating fear. Following this, the sudden cut to Richard's point of view reveals Northumberland blurring into focus, as though his concentration were elsewhere. These indications of fear continue as Richard makes his speech, from further extreme close-ups and cut-ins. Richard's gauntleted hands fiddle with the sceptre, and his knees rattle beneath his armour, showing that beneath this performance he is still just a man. These shots allow us to see the details of Richard's humanities that are imperceptible to the men far below, a contrast between the presented self and the real self, the divine and the human. Richard is unable to locate Bolingbroke in the crowd, as the two-shot of Bolingbroke and the Duke of York is taken from ground level rather than his perspective, revealing Richard's fallibility. Thank you for watching this presentation. I hope that this brief exploration has shown how cinematic techniques such as framing and close-ups can be used to promote a theme.